and I'm one of the hosts of a brand new show brought to you by Bestel Foundation.
The Wellbeing Show is to help reach BAME families, to help with mental health, support and emotional needs. The Wellbeing Show streams live every Tuesday at 8 to 9 p.m. on Diversity Radio via Facebook, YouTube and Mixcloud. So tell your family and friends to tune in as we discuss topics that affect our well-being. The Wellbeing Show is proudly sponsored by NHS South London and Maudsley, the National Lottery Community Fund, and partnered with Real Insight, Base, 60 Seconds Creative Studio, and Gold Diggers Talk Show.
Hi, good evening everyone, and welcome to this week's Wellbeing Show brought to you by Bestel Foundation. And we're here live on Diversity Radio. My name is Miss Newlove and I'm your host. And as usual, I have my co-host, Miss Jacqui Obeng, who is the CEO of Base, Become a Successful Entrepreneur, and also a teacher of economics and business. I want to thank you all for tuning into the show today. We have our guest from last week, who is Mr. Simon Darnley, the amazing Mr. Simon Darnley, full of knowledge. And today is part 2 of what we were discussing last week, kind of like a continuation, should I say, addressing racism and health inequalities which affect mental health within the community, or within community, should I say. But before we get into it, I'd like to thank our sponsors, as we normally do, and our partners. Our sponsors are South London and Maudsley NHS Trust, the National Lottery Community Fund. Our partners are Real Insight, 60 Seconds Creative Studio, Base, Become a Successful Entrepreneur, and Gold Diggers Talk Show. So as I said, I have the amazing Jacqui Obeng, my partner in crime, my co-host, and I'd like to bring her on right now. So yeah. Good evening, Jacqui.
Hi, babe. How are you? Hi,
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fabulous, thank you. Hello, Mr. Darnley. Simon, how are you?
Very well.
Good. Well, it's good to be here once again, and welcome back to the Wellbeing Show. It was been great last week, discussing the challenges that affect mental health within the BAME communities. And today we're just doing the part 2, as Miss Newlove said, addressing the stigma, addressing the rates, and also addressing the areas that affect the communities. So obviously people from the BAME background has the right to access all the mental health treatment and services within the NHS, and also recognizing that mental health is a stigma within the community. So I know you talked about Dr. Jacqui Dyer last week, and you know, she was you mentioned about the PCREF, which is the Patient and Carer Race Equality Framework.
We call it the PCREF, the tips for short.
PCREF.
That's
can you give us a bit background, because we're sort of recapping from last week what PCREF is about, and then we're going to lead into addressing the racism and the health inequalities, which is quite detailed. So I want us to, if you can, briefly explain again, because we can't remember exactly what the framework is about. We know it's about Jacqui. Give us a background about that quickly.
Yeah. Oh, well, the PCREF, like I say, the Patient and Carer Race Equality Framework, this has been a recommendation from a Mental Health Act review, from the whole Mental Health Act was reviewed, and it was said, actually, there needs to be a much more work on actually patient and carer race equality. We realised that particularly Black, Asian, ethnic minorities seem to have lots of inequalities with mental health trusts. So it's going to become a statutory requirement for all mental health trusts. And we're luckily in SLAM, South London and Maudsley Hospital, we are going to be one of the pilot sites. We're along with Manchester, Birmingham, and another North London site as well. And the goal of the PCREF is to help move equality and access, experience, and outcome. So our initial focus is particularly Black African and Black Caribbean people, because the data shows that they are the most disadvantaged within our services. So we want them to be able to access services equally, experience them equally, and have the same outcomes in actually how well they do. And that's really, really important. So it's a real kind of just partnership between the staff, the service users and carers. It's not about actually, in this case, it's not about engaging the community to what change. We need to seek changing ourselves to make sure that we allow that access, that when people that have that work with us in mental health problems, that they experience services equally and their outcomes are just as good. Because in all those three areas, we know that they don't have good access, they experience things differently, and also their outcomes tend to be poorer. So we need to work on that.
I was just going to say, I forgot for you to introduce yourself. So if you can quickly talk about your background.
Yep. My background is, I'm currently head of nursing and quality for SLAM across what's called the Right Care programme, which involves in many developments and improvements all across the trust. Previously, I was head of nursing for Lambeth and worked closely there with Blackfriars, and very aware of the negative inequalities that impact mental health being of people across London, covering Brixton and Streatham with my main areas in that sense as well.
Good.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you once again for being on the show. That's very impressive CV, should I say?
Yeah.
And yes, thank you for coming to share your experience of working within the BAME community. Last week, we really enjoyed listening to the words of wisdom, knowledge that you had for us. So today, like I mentioned before, and you've mentioned, and Jacqui's also mentioned, we're addressing racism and health inequalities which affect mental health within the communities. So I'd just like to remind everyone to get interactive. Please share this show with your family and friends. We're live here on Diversity Radio on Facebook, and I believe we're live on Bestel Foundation's YouTube. Bestel Child and Adult Psychiatric Foundation are committed to ensuring accessibilities of their services via their website or the various social media platforms. And alternatively, you can also call our staff. And I believe the details are going across the screen, and it will be going across throughout the whole show. So you can access Hilda, Marion, Stella, who is the founder of Bestel Foundation, and Christabel. Addressing health inequalities has been a priority in mental health for years, as highlighted in the 5-year forward view for mental health and the NHS long-term plan. In the light of COVID-19 pandemic, it has become more important than ever, as we all know. The virus and its social and economic impacts are disproportionately impacting specific groups, including Black, Asian, and Black ethnic minorities, which we discovered and we acknowledge as BAME communities. While government investigates the causes of this, NHS England and NHS Improvement are committed to supporting local health systems to better address inequalities in access, experience, and outcomes of mental health care. So I'm going to hand it over back to Jacqui and Simon to continue with the show.
All right. So first of all, is about the BAME and obviously about inequalities, basically. So, about Black Lives Mattering within racial inequalities. How is it in terms of the forefront or in everybody's mind globally, which gives us opportunity about tapping into the health system? So I'm just going to skip through all of that and discuss how inequalities are, racism are, or the vital bits or the challenges that we go through. So Simon, how would you, first of all, define what health inequalities is? And how would you elaborate it, covering all these areas? Right. How is that affecting us? Do you see what I mean?
So inequalities are basically things that are avoidable,
right,
unfair and unjust differences in the health status of different groups, particularly, this may be populations, but particularly a distribution of, when you say there's unequal distribution of kind of social, environmental, we know there's economic conditions within societies, and they determine the risk of people not only getting ill, but actually preventing that sickness. So preventing this, so getting mental health is actually, it determines their likelihood of becoming mentally ill, and then their ability to get the treatment that's necessary and the opportunity to actually treat that. And actually, when they're going through that treatment, making sure they have a treatment as equally as other people. So when it occurs, we know, for example, there was a recent, with the COVID and the pandemic, we know that Mind did a survey of over 14,000 adults, revealing that there was a lot of existing inequalities, housing and employment, finance, those sorts of issues, particularly from the Black, Asian, ethnic minority, over more than white people, and they actually were affected much more. Their mental health was made worse during the pandemic than actually equivalent of white people in those areas as well. So that's not just because of the pandemic, it's because of other factors, particularly where the people's culture. Right.
So when it says especially with racism, what does that part mean? Because is it tapping into the services, the workforce being racist, or
no? I don't think it's
providing of care.
Yeah, the racism bit's difficult because I don't think you would necessarily say that people are deliberately racist, as racism and that sense as well. But we do know that there's maybe we haven't developed culturally appropriate, for example, treatments. We haven't developed culturally appropriate measures of recovery. We know that a lot of people, for example, in the medicine is very Western driven. It's kind of very Western orientated in that sense as well. That's come from that. That's where it's in this country. We also know within staff, there was a paper called Snowy White Peaks, which suggested that staff of South London Morsey, for example, there's over 6,000 staff there, and over half are women, and we have a lot of BAME staff. But we know that as you go up the grades into different higher levels of management, suddenly that just falls off a tree. Suddenly, by about when people get to just after ward manager, above that grade, it actually becomes very white dominated. And the kind of Snowy White Peak suggests that the kind of at the top you tend to find white male or females. You tend to be white males is the kind of most stereotypical thing as well. And there is a lot of difficulty. And why is it that disproportionately there are a lot more white staff at senior levels? It's not because, now what we found was SLAM have tried to take a really proactive position by doing lots of specific BAME leadership courses and mentorship. So I particularly mentored two amazing members of staff who were charge nurses, and they'd been charge nurses for some years. And I didn't understand why until I took them on in kind of like mentorship, kind of BAME membership, to find out. So somebody senior would mentor them to find out what's happening, why is that? And it's all to do with confidence often. So they were Caribbean women, both of them, and they just think, well, it's not, is this something that I would be able to do? I don't see people like me in these jobs, but they were so much more knowledgeable than me, so much more confident, so intelligent, they were so caring, compassionate, and really wanted to make something with their lives. So actually having that leadership support to actually identify people and support them into getting that thing. They didn't know how to do interviews properly, all these things as well, where actually they need that support and confidence within themselves. You can. Whereas I know that even though I'm half Chinese, I've been brought up with a kind of vision that I can do what I want. I'm able to do that. And that's a very white male orientation that nothing's going to stop me applying for that. We know that because often people over apply, if anything else, apply for jobs that they've got absolutely no chance in, but they're confident within themselves. So there is something about that with staff. Now we know with patient groups coming in, there's a whole range of reasons why people do not access treatments. I remember saying last week about in treating thousands of people with phobias, we didn't have one black man come from. Now there's something really true. I don't know what your views on and why that is, or whether you could understand that, but that's really weird for a phobia clinic in Peckham. Right. So it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. We've got to do something about it as well. So we need to make those change ideas. So what can we do? How can we change ourselves? Can we learn about people's cultures more? Can we make an understanding? What can we do to make that awareness and organizational change and competency to allow that to happen? So we're asking us to change to make those, to help people access services equally and get better treatment. Exactly. So can you explain how you can reduce holistically, how it could be reduced?
The equalities.
Yeah, so the reducing inequalities, that's one of the big defining features of the NHS long-term plan. It acknowledges it acknowledges we can't treat our way out of inequalities. What we can do is ensure that we do what we can to drive them down to as little as possible.
So how would we try to drive it down? Give examples.
Okay, so there's a lot of examples that we're doing in PQEF. Of each one, what we've asked everybody to do is actually come up with their own awareness of that. So, for example, in Lambeth, some of the ideas they're doing there is they're having cultural awareness competencies. So people are much more aware of understanding the induction appraisals to actually kind of the whole self, to understand the relationships much more with Black service users and carers. So that's a really important thing to actually understand that self within Lambeth as well. Our services need to look more like the people we treat. That's a really important thing that we know we need to promote and recruit people that are much more local to our services who look similar to the people they're treating. At the moment, that's not necessarily always the case. So we have a much better cultural understanding and also be able to measure it. So there's also particular measurements we're looking at where we're really trying to identify. A good example is use of seclusion or restraint by ethnicity. We know that often Black male patients are much more likely to be secluded than white male patients.
Right.
So what's that about? What's that about understanding how a person may experience distress and experience mental health problems and being understanding like that as well. So it's been proven that, there's lots of cultural aspects that may lead to a misunderstanding of a wrongful seclusion, that somebody expressing their distress in a way which another person's frightened of may lead to seclusion. We're actually understanding that and actually understanding that cultural knowledge of how people may be quite loud or quite close, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's aggression. Doesn't mean it's a threat. Doesn't need to be seclusion. So there's some cultural ignorance that we need to kind of share and deal with.
Exactly.
I don't know how if any of this is making sense to you.
It does. For example, the culture bit is quite important, and obviously recruiting different types of background as well would make a difference, and also the services provided as well. Again, in terms of caring and stuff, could also. I'm not NHS staff, so I wouldn't know, but then it does make a lot of stuff. It makes sense. We might make a difference.
And especially with drug-induced psychosis, understanding that cannabis can be part of a community culture where it's not necessarily a part of my culture, or even so that's as well. It just isn't there, but it's actually can be a very normalized aspect of somebody's life in that sense as well.
Right.
And and unfortunately that can happen where people become admitted to our hospitals through police or police arrests, and that sort as well. And they're saying, this person is acting inappropriate, and that can really become a difficulty in that sense as well. And also how people are diagnosed very quickly as well to those things as well. So we really kind of have to understand that much more and actually have that awareness. So people are really trying to change ideas and actually at a deeper level to say, actually, what we need to do is change us.
Right. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? A quick question, Simon?
Yes.
With what you're saying, do you find this is more in London, or what's it like outside of London, like in other parts of the UK, England? Can you enlighten us about outside London, or just?
I mean, I've worked all my adult life in London at SLAM actually. So I worked in Maidstone for a while. It's very different there. So in Maidstone, the makeup of people with psychosis would be mainly white. In London, it's black. So the pilot programs for PQEF is going also across Manchester and Birmingham as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Midlands. Yeah.
So there would be people who have worked with me and moved to places like Devon, Cornwall or Norwich have a very different experience. But actually I think that actually they may experience more racism and actually more inequalities and actually getting access to services, because they would be people from a Obeng community. There would be a very big minority in that sense as well. Whereas in South London and South London, the Maudsley, which covers Lambeth, Southwark, Croydon and Lewisham, of course, there is a significant amount of people. I think it's like just under 40% are BAME staff in some ways, BAME patients as well. So it's significant. And we really, particularly, the PQF is about Black African and Black Caribbean people, particularly, because they're the most disadvantaged groups.
Yeah.
So and that's really interesting to discuss why. Is there a whole thing? So the starting initial pilots are looking at those aspects. What are we doing? Each borough has aims in doing that. In Lambeth, we're really wanting to do cultural awareness. There's other ones about trying to say, okay, we want to focus on seclusion particularly, or getting the learning from complaints is another issue. So Southwark, one of the things they're doing in Southwark is really trying to learn from complaints and incidences as well, to look at them and say, actually, can we tangibly change these in how, through a kind of radicalised lens, a focus on Black service users' experience, and actually saying, what is their experience? Can we look at learning from those things to say, how can we change as a result of that? Which I think is really important, because we can learn a lot through complaints. That's why I always like complaints, because it's actually hopefully a feedback for us to learn from.
Which
cool. Okay, Ms. Newlove, go ahead.
Yeah, so in reference to working well together, can you kindly elaborate, for further understanding, if that makes sense?
So, working well. So working well together. Let me just find that as well.
I think we've gone.
No, you're at the. How is it important to recognize different groups that their likelihood of a mental health problem? That's where we are.
Yes. So obviously, how important is it? Yeah, that's where we are. So we're really.
That's where we are.
So yes. So your question about how is it important to recognise groups? It cannot be more important. Of course, we know that there's, as I said, it's influenced as well, and I said that the NHS cannot solve these factors, but we've really got to try and openly admit what is going on and how we do that. It's really hard to do this, but it's also. But we've got to be able to do this. We've got particular areas that I want to say the PQF are focused on. It's particularly like equally of diagnosis. So I've talked about particularly psychosis. We get an equality of how we diagnose people, rather than actually a vast majority tend to be Black Afro-Caribbean men as well.
Okay.
Also the use of medication for people as well. The use of detention, the use of seclusion. These are things that we say, okay, we've got different groups. We know they're going to have mental health problems. And we also know that there may be social economic factors and jobs and things like that, and racism in other areas that raises that. But what are the things there that then stop them getting that access to treatment? So is it because the first person they see is somebody who they're not particularly familiar with, a very white person who doesn't understand their culture, doesn't understand how they're going to present, and all these things as well, and then how they access treatment, which is always a problem. For example, a lot of people we see in poverty, they won't necessarily have a smartphone. So we have a lot of apps on smartphones and things like that as well. How do we give access to those things? They won't necessarily log on and do these things. This happens with older people as well. There's an inequality there about people getting access and having to use systems which younger people can do very much easily, but older often in different cultures that's not the case. They just don't do it, and therefore that. My mum was a good example of that. She just was not ever able to anything, even paying the gas bill, anything like that was always a problem to do in that sense. So we have to make it open and much easier for a whole wide range of people.
I was just going to ask there. So is there different like a demographic of groups that you guys are targeting? For example, the OAPs or young people. It doesn't depend on the number of patients you receive.
Yeah, it does. And we know at the moment, like we said, the PQF we're focusing on are particularly Black Caribbean and Black African. We know that there's lots of different groups have different levels of satisfaction by the healthcare they receive and inequality and experience. So, for example, is lesbian, gay, bisexual, Black African minority. They have much poorer levels of satisfaction with community services compared to heterosexual and white counterparts in that sense as well, kind of cis males like myself. So different groups receive different treatments also have different outcomes, which is like really surprising. So we know that kind of particularly Black Caribbean, Black African have generally poor recovery rates than white British groups as well. Now that there must be something there we can do, because the treatment works. So why would they have poor outing? What is going on there as well? So we're trying to put in different goals to say detailed guidance to what we can do to recognize that and to treat that in some ways.
And this is a very long-term plan, as you put it. It is a long-term
and it's
plan.
And it's like turning around the Titanic, I think, as well. Health services, as they built up over the 40, 50 years, have been one way in that sense.
Okay. All right. So can you explain what the local health system is? I was a bit confused about that. What is that, and how does it play in a crucial role within addressing mental health? Right. Maybe you can spend time explaining what local health system is. Okay.
So as mental health inequalities are varied and contextual, the local health systems, they would be ideally poised to co-produce local solutions with communities experience mental health inequalities. So most mental health services, especially those at the first point of contact, we call single point of contact. The first contact for is usually via the GP or he rings up, and that's
so is that the local health system contacting the GP and then
or maybe yes, for the mental health service it may be a phone call to an IAP service that you can go online and just have that occur, but it'll be somebody where first contact. They're commissioned locally, so they're commissioned within each borough. So they would commission within the Lambeth service or Southwark. The CCG would commission those things. And
what's CCG?
So the I've used it for years, and now suddenly it's gone out of my head.
My goodness! You're coming up with these terminologies. No. I'm just nodding, and I don't think I get that.
I cannot believe that. That's so.
I'm sorry, I've got to stop you there, but carry on, because we need to understand the system.
No, it's a clinical care group. So these are people who hold the money for and commissioners, clinical commissioning group. That's what I said.
Did you say clinical commissioning group?
Commissioning group.
Okay. All right.
For mental health services and acute as well, and do that as well. So it's expected to. So what's happened? These commission services are expected to increase with the rollout of this NHS provider collaborative commissioning services. So the development of the integrated care system and rollout of NHS provider collaborative present absolutely new opportunities for the local health systems to take population approaches to reduce inequalities. So actually to take that into account when commissioning services as well, and then streamlining and localizing care that treats the whole person. And so the most vulnerable patients don't fall through the gaps, because that's what tends to happen. In the past, we said, okay, you need this amount of counselling, for example, or this amount of community mental health nurses, or this amount of wards, but not take into account the actual population and the makeup of that population as well, has meant a lot of people have fell through the gaps, particularly children and young people. There's a lot of specific work on there, transformation plans there to do that. They definitely need to be identified as well. Yeah. And so the systems are used. There's an advancing mental health equality resource that's actually developed by the National Collaborating Centre for Mental Health, and that provides detailed guidance and methods to identify and reduce the inequalities related to mental health support, care and treatment. So actually trying to take into account right at the top when you're commissioning these services as well, and is a really important thing. So the emphasis can be on the particular groups in a particular borough. For example, in Lambeth, there is a particular group around Stockwell of 30 to 40,000 people from Portuguese. There's a very big Portuguese community there. They need to be aware of that when commissioning services, and what services do they need that might be slightly different to the Black Afro-Caribbean group, which are very popular in kind of South Brixton and all those areas as well. So it's being aware of these groups.
Okay, well, fabulous. That's really good clarity. Thanks for that, Simon. It's Newlove. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was running ahead of my time. So I was supposed to ask you now, in reference to working well together, can you kindly elaborate for further understanding?
No, that's absolutely fine. It makes sense in working together. So these working well together, the evidence and tools to enable cooperation and commission are also developed by the NCCMH, like I said above before, the National Collaborating Centre for Mental Health. And so these aims to improve the local decision making about the current and future mental health services, and working with the communities to say, okay, the focus must be facing the dealing with the inequalities that are there in the system. So one example is the IAP services, improving access to psychological therapy services, which provides often good counselling, CBT. There's now a positive practice guide particularly for BAME service users and older people in how to provide the care in a way that's much more culturally sensitive and accessible for those particular people. Older people being over 65.
Right. Cool. So we're just going to remind ourselves that we are not clinical specialists. So we've got Simon here.
Why not, listeners?
Thank you so much for you to be here today.
Okay.
It's an interactive show. I'm quite disappointed today. Can't find a lot of people online, Miss Newlove. Can you see people on there? I think.
Well, whoever's supposed to be here is here. We just want to say hi to DJ Francis. Thank you for joining us. He's here every week. And
that's
also
my king's in town, right? That's my king.
And a happy belated birthday. Was his birthday on Monday. King. So yes, and also Brenda Montage, thank you for tuning in.
Right, welcome Brenda. And then you got Stella on there. Thanks Stella for joining in. And I think a few people come on. So we will carry on. So if you can explore on the long and short-term goals on positive practices in advancing equalities, assets, experience, and outcomes, which has been documented and shared collectively. So first of all, what is the long-term and the short? Is it the one we discussed previously?
The short-term goals, there's a few short-term goals. One is mainly to populate and promote kind of like a library of emerging positive practice. So we need to find out what's good. Let's not throw everything out with the bathwater. Find out what's good and actually learn from that. And then also collect and share learning from our sisters that are testing out and rolling out new models of care. So there is funding for this to identify the gaps to what's going on, identify those gaps and support the kind of National Institute for wider health and research, and the government can address them. So if people feel, okay, these are really good positive practices, we really want to know about those. We want to promote them, we want to share them, we want to learn from them, and then we want to try and roll them out. So we're collecting that library. In the longer term, we want to have a kind of well-populated and robust library of positive practice guides and case studies that can really support when moving forward with kind of mental health inequalities as well, and then continue to expand this and evolve as we gain more and more evidence as well, because we need to collect that evidence. We're in that phase of, okay, what is going on, what can we do as well, and that's frequently accessed by, hopefully consulted by those CCG people and providers and commissioners to say, oh, these are good things that people have done, not just within our boroughs but within the whole country as well.
Cool. So does that involve the long-term goals then?
That's the long-term goals, yeah. So it's actually to try and find those, promote them, and then use them, once we've got them, to use them to identify and consult for when people commission mental health services in the future, which is really important to learn from.
Which is an ongoing thing until...
It has to be an ongoing thing. Mental health services are constantly recommissioned, constantly trying to review what's needed more of, what's needed less of in that sense as well, and where the focus should be. There's a big focus towards community treatment and big focus towards actually accessing people treatment at home. At the moment, within IAPT, of course, there's a big move to online treatment, because that's often the kind of whole pandemic has made us think, okay, can we provide treatment in people's homes? For a lot of people, that's really, really good. It means they don't have to go to services. They can have their counselling and their support right in their own home at their own time. For some people, it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate when people are scared and anxious, or the home is causing the problem. Then they need to come to the hospital or whatever. So, but it's a new thing which just 4 or 5 years ago wouldn't have been an option. But now it's a huge increasing option. That option where you can have online therapy.
Wow, cool, very interesting. Thank you so much. Go ahead, babe.
Yeah, so we're kind of, coming to the end of our discussion, but we haven't finished just yet. And if you've been affected or you want to know more about what Simon's been talking about, you can contact Bestel Child and Addict Psychiatric Foundation. As I said, our information is going across the screen at the bottom. We are sponsored by South London and Maudsley NHS, which Simon is a part of. So yes, you can contact Bestel for any more information, or if you've been affected or you just want some more knowledge on what we've been discussing. So Simon, can you kindly explain how collecting and using data to inform intelligent insights and decision making is crucial in advancing mental health equalities?
So we said how really important it is to try and collect data. We can't learn unless we actually have data, and that's really important. So it's not my view, it's not your point, it's actually what is happening, and actually collecting that from people's stories, your experiences. Can we learn from where there's been serious incidences, complaints, from those things as well. There have been developments in improving the kind of quality and flow of data in that sense as well, from a kind of national mental health data set. And there's also data include every time you go to improving access for psychological therapies, a kind of counselling thing as well. There's data sets there. Sometimes there's problems, but there's, in particular, we've been quite poor on collecting data on people's protected characteristics as well, and ethnicity. So that has been really difficult. So we need to get better at that, and we need to be more accurate in doing that as well. And that will allow more analysis and learning to be used to really increase our accountability and actually say, okay, and also identify which schemes and initiatives we should support to get those better outcomes as well. So there's a long-term NHS plan that's included there for all major programs, including the mental health program, and that would identify kind of measures, really specific measures for reducing inequalities as well. And it's really important to kind of identify those things. We know that there's always a problem in data quality, but we've identified that we've got to get better at it, and then listen to it and understand what the data is saying as well, and then work closely to what not only people who are experts by experience, their service user experience as well, is actually they should be really heavily involved in what they see as important as well, so they can define and ensure what is measured can really make a meaningful change.
Okay, I think you've said it all for now.
Yeah. So we're going to acknowledge some people on there.
Yes,
some interesting people.
Okay.
Based from Accra. I don't know if he's in Accra or he's in the country. Thanks for joining.
We can't hear you.
Nathaniel, thank you for joining. I think Francis coming in now. Guys, it's an interactive program. We've been talking for 38 minutes now. So we have questions to come in. So please do put your questions forward for us. And at this time, if Big Joe, you're ready, if you can play one of the videos, 2 or 3, please. And we'll just take it from there. Miss Newlove, you want to say anything?
No, I don't. Just the normal. If you need any advice or you've been affected by the program, make sure you contact Bestel Foundation. And yeah, this is the Wellbeing Show. We're here every Tuesday at 8 to 9 p.m. And sometimes it's just me and Jacqui, but for the last week, well, including today, 2 weeks, we've had Simon, and Simon was here previously as well.
It's been really good with what we've learned so far, especially the equalities. That is a great big topic within the community, which we need to tackle, especially with racism, behaviors, our culture differences. So it's quite interesting to learn about, really. I'm very pleased. But then I think this will really take a long time, because within the BAME community, it's quite difficult for people to address that they're suffering from a mental health issue. You see what I mean?
Right.
And because you're in that area, it's quite easy, because it comes to you straight away. And that's why this is happening for the community to understand that, believe it or not, we have got mental health problems. It could be at work, or it could be with the children, or it could be at home. And that's why we're bringing this program to the community, so that, as you said, if there's a problem, they can either contact their cell or their GP, and then the rest follows up.
So what's really important, because I think that's really, really good at doing that, is that understanding, is there maybe take subject. So a discussion, I don't know if you've done a discussion particularly depression, or which is a really big thing, and how that's experienced that, and how that does that. Anxiety disorders is an area which I'm a specialist in as well. So not just generalized anxiety disorders, OCD, all these kind of fears people have, body dysmorphic disorder as well, and then psychosis, which is the big one as well.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, being the big one in the BAME community. The
I think it is a big area. We know that's important, but what I'm also aware is that I believe there's a lot of people in the BAME community who would be suffering from anxiety and depression, and struggling.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, I actually really struggling with that. I'd be really surprised, especially with COVID and all the difficulties, the price rises, money, that people aren't really stressed, anxious and worried, and then having thoughts which they really don't like. So it may be thoughts about what's the point, losing energy, all these things are areas of depression that would be very, very common. I would have thought. We know that it would be 40% of us would suffer depression at some point in our lives. We know that everybody, I think without exception, would know somebody close to them who has mental health problems, and therefore always, for the grace of God, it would be us. So it's sometimes very difficult to recognize mental health problems until they become difficult, until they become really, really chronic, and then it's like anything else. We know this with men's health, we know this with lots of things. We know that particularly there's a gender difficulty issue. We know that women tend to have problems more than men, and then there's a cultural issue as well. So it can be double whammy for certain groups.
Right. Well, we're going to move on because the video, I think, Big Joe is taking a little bit of time. So can we just move on to the workforce part of the system? What is that workforce part of the system? So is it the obviously the NHS working system, is it?
So you're talking about, so a diverse and represented workforce is all systems, and that's what we have to have. So this is about our staff, basically.
So it's staff, right?
Yeah, it's staff. It's the NHS people.
So how is that affecting us, and how's that part of the inequalities?
Well, mainly because I remember I was saying earlier about actually who you see. We need a strong vision for a more inclusive NHS, and where diversity is celebrated within staff as well. We have a lot of problems with racism within our own staff as well. So we need to kind of acknowledge the differences we have, and staff are supported to thrive within their own culture, and that's encouraged. So the mental health program works across these to identify, working with kind of helping the HEE, which is the kind of Health Education England, and drive a whole range of initiatives as well to try and say there should be increased fairness of access, inclusive mental health training. For example, we know that our BAME staff go on, I think it's like 40% less courses than white staff.
Interesting. Within the NHS,
that's advanced course, not just mandatory training, but other courses. So we don't access the actual the actual courses that are there as well. That maybe they don't believe they can get that, or what the white staff tend to get that more, but they don't. We know, for example, that our BAME staff have much more disciplinaries than our white staff. There's some really shocking facts on the workforce to actually identify and be open about these things as well.
Sorry, Simon, when you say disciplinary, what do you mean?
Finish off. Sorry.
So there are a lot more disciplinaries within our BAME staff than white staff. Now, that's not saying that our BAME staff, and we know that BAME staff aren't necessarily worse. It's just that how often, when there's issues, their complaints tend to be go through a HR process. I'm talking in general terms. Significantly more than white staff.
Right.
There's a workforce equality standard that identifies this. It's really, really important as well to actually review what are people's pathways, what are these specific routes, and how do we get an inclusive communication to make sure we incorporate people and the trainers and networks from a diverse background as well. Because that's important. And I remember I said before, the higher you go up the process as well, the more white the staff tend to be. in that sense as well. So you're likely to come up with those things as well. So there's a whole workforce program to identify and look at that, of which Jacqui Dyer, with a number of experts, is involved in actually trying to say, okay, it's not just looking at the patients and carers, but also looking at staff.
Yeah, because that can cause to an increase in the mental health area as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, it could.
So we need to retain those things. I said to you earlier about actually, I want the staff in Lambeth and in Brixton. We have a lovely clinic in Brixton and Streatham. When people come there, I do want significant amounts of BAME staff who live in the area, who work in the area. That would be much better, who understand the issues of the area as well and can relate to people coming in.
So is it Jacqui that's come up, and the other members that I saw last week?
She's one of the members as well, but
she's one of the members. Which they work behalf of NHS? Are they part of the NHS?
The NHS People Plan for that sense as well, to make sure that we're much more inclusive and we celebrate our staff as well.
Yeah, well, that's really good. That's a really good project, and hopefully you're going to get Jacqui on. You said. Yeah, are you going to
try and get her on? We'll get her on.
Try and get her on. It would be good for her to be on, and she can educate us a lot. Even though you've told us all about.
No. You get it from her. You get a much more passionate and story, also about her own experiences as well.
Yeah, I saw the video.
Yeah. And, it's very powerful.
Very powerful. She can tell.
Powerful person.
She's very passionate as well about what she does.
She's dedicated her life to it, which is very, very impressive. And she won't. She will say it as it is. So just be ready for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Right, we're ready now, Big Joe. Have you got both videos? Have we got any questions then? Any questions online before we play the video? Okay, so Joe, you can go ahead. The number 2 and number 3. Oh, come on.
Today we're publishing the third of 3 briefings produced for the Commission for Equality and Mental Health. It's a 2-year initiative that is coming to an end in November 2020, so very soon. And this briefing looks at the last area we're focusing on, which is the inequalities we see of people's experiences of mental health support and the outcomes they get from it. We already know from our previous work that there are huge inequalities in mental health, and they're across the whole of society. And we know that access to mental health support is often poorer for those that have the worst mental health. What we've also found in this briefing is very often people's experiences are poorer too. So, for example, finding it harder to get effective help, finding services that don't feel safe or don't meet people's needs, or needing repeat admissions to hospital under the Mental Health Act. We see this for a number of different groups, and most dramatically for people from Black communities in Britain. So we've been looking at why this is and what needs to change to help to address that. And what's clear is that poor access to support is very often at the heart of this, that because people often struggle to get help until it's too late, that makes the whole experience a really negative one, too often involving the use of coercion. So we really need a system change. This isn't just about making services a little bit better. This is about really changing things root and branch. NHS England has recently set out its strategy called Advancing Mental Health Equalities. We think this holds a huge amount of promise. Given the right time, given the right commitment, given the right resources, this could make a real difference in the NHS. We have to make sure it goes across the whole system.
So did you guys had a look to, did you watch the video at all, Eva?
No.
Hi everyone, my name's Dr. Alex George. I'm an A&E doctor working in London in England, and I'm also the UK's Youth Mental Health Ambassador. I want to say a very big hello to all of you, and also sending you lots of love throughout this time. I think students, young people, children, teachers, you've all been so resilient throughout this time in the most difficult of situations and scenarios. And I hope this video is going to be a really, really positive one. It's all about how to look after yourself. I know you've got half term ahead, and I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself throughout that time. This is Dr. Alex's 5 a day. Here are my 5 top tips. Tip number 1, get outside. Really important that you get out and get some natural light during these times. Obviously, in lockdown, spending a lot of time at home, inside, maybe in your bedrooms, but we need natural light. It's important for our mental health as well as our physical health too. Getting out for a walk, getting air in our lungs, it makes us feel better. Tip number 2, exercise. Sometimes we can't be bothered. I come home from work sometimes from A&E and think, I really don't want to do any exercise, but we know it helps us. It helps us feel better. A 20-minute workout at home, or getting outside for a run, a walk, or with your family members makes all the difference. It boosts blood flow to your brain. It increases the happy hormones, endorphins, and makes us feel good. Tip number 3, call a friend. I know how frustrating it's been not being able to hang out with your mates, feeling like you can't, go and do the things that you enjoy with your friends, but we can use technology to help us. Pick up your phone, have a video call, FaceTime, chat with them. It feels good to open up and share how you're feeling with your friends too, because they're probably feeling the same way. I always make sure I call one friend, at least one friend, every single day. It might make their day. Number 4, eat well. It's easy when you're at home, not to bother having a good routine with your diet or thinking, oh, well, what time is breakfast? What doesn't matter. But actually, it does make a difference. What you eat actually affects the way that you feel. So make sure you're getting your regular meals, your breakfast, lunch and dinner, and you're trying to make sure you have as much green on your plate as you can. Doctor's orders. 5th tip, sleep routine. Sleep is so important for how we feel. We all know if you have a bad night's sleep, the next morning you get up and you're feeling grumpy and you're not your usual self. So try to make sure that you have a routine about when you go to bed, not staying up too late on your phone, and getting up at a normal, regular time in the morning really helps us, regulate our mood, make sure that our sleep is effective, getting quality sleep, and that we feel good for the day ahead. Guys, I hope these tips have been useful. Again, I'm sending so much love and positivity to you all. You're doing amazing. Keep going. And don't forget, if you are struggling, reach out and ask for help. Speak to your family, speak to a friend, speak to a GP. There are always people out there who want to support. Don't forget the Samaritans are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you need support, reach out to them. Lots of love to you all. Enjoy your half term and goodbye. Hey everyone, my name.
Hey.
Thank you for the video. Big Joe, thank you so much. That was quite interesting, the 5 a day by Dr. Alex. And once again, we'd like to thank Simon for the detailed insight on addressing racism and health inequalities which affect mental health within communities. Thank you so much, Simon, for coming once again. And we hope, I think you're a regular now, so we'll definitely be seeing you again on the Wellbeing Show.
Yeah, I am really interested in the PCREF. I'm also really interested about, how, the referral, the long-term plan, and how the data, do you see what I mean? How it affects workforces, and how it's been built. It's really interesting because I obviously am a full-time worker. I do experience these things. You suffer sometimes from loads of anxiety and all. So, and that's why, I'm really keen to get Dr. Jacqui Dyer on, so she, she can come on and I can learn, and how to deal, with some anxiety and how to tap, into the NHS system as well. How I can get on myself, So it's really good for me. And thank you so much, Simon.
Pleasure.
It's a blessing. And having you, we are going to use you all the time, whether you like it or not. So we are going to email you in the middle of the night, asking you to come onto the show. So it's been fabulous. It's been
thank you so much. So we'd also like to acknowledge our Bestel team, because without Bestel, we wouldn't even have this show. So we'd like to acknowledge our patron, Mr. Peter Hassler. Thank you so much. And thank you for introducing us to Simon, because he's been, a pleasure on the show, as you can see, and he's brought so much knowledge and information to our topics of discussion. We'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Shusham Gupta, who is a patron for Bestel Foundation as well, Mrs. Lauren Cullingham, who is a psychologist, Dr. Justina Sherpatswa, who is a consultant psychiatrist, Nashu Mamori, who is the CEO of Real Insight and also Diversity Radio. Thank you so much. And our country coordinator in Ghana, because as we mentioned, we work in Ghana as well as here. And we want to say a big thank you to George Besser-Simons and Mrs. Linda Kwachi, Mrs. Anne Marie Mainu, and Mrs. Fendi Taylor. These are the silent people that work behind closed doors, you know, working in the community and working for Bestel Foundation. Also, Hilda and Miriam, who are both responsible for catering and provisions of warm food to various households, which puts priceless smiles on people's faces in the community. Thank you so much. And finally, the person who takes care of Bestel Foundation's funding, that's Mr. Andy Che. And also a big thank you to our CEO and founder, Stella. Thank you so much, Stella Azimai, for coming up with the concept of this show, because it's working and we're able to reach the community in the comfort of their own homes. So thank you so much, Stella. We also like to remind our listeners that Bestel Foundation are a community project. So we're also a charity. And yes, a charity needs help. We need funding. We need help from the community.
We do need funding.
Yes, we need funding so we can continue doing the work that we do. So we do have the details of Bestel Foundation's bank account that will be coming up on the screen. You can donate as much and as little as you want. Every penny counts to us. We appreciate everything that you would contribute to help us continue doing the work here in the UK and in Ghana. Also, would like to finally, thank our sponsors once again, South London and Maudsley NHS Trust, where Simon's come from, the National Lottery, Community Fund, Real Insight Consultants, Diversity Radio. Thank you so much for powering the show on your platform. Also, 60 Seconds Creative Studio Base, Become a Successful Entrepreneur, which is owned by our very own Jacqui. Thank you so much. And thank you for being my co-host every week. Thank you for committing.
Welcome. I'm going to briefly go through Bestel's values and missions in the UK, values and missions. Before that, I've seen FA Grants on there. She's joined us last minute. Thank you, Miss FA, for joining. I can see Frank Sarkody's there. A couple of other people have joined. So Eva, have a look on the screen and give us the acknowledgement whilst I go through.
For some reason, I don't get the updates quickly. It's like it comes later. So I can't see what you're seeing.
Well, so Bestel reach out to anyone who needs us. We are an independent, stronger partnership. So Bestel is in partnership with SLAM and the other partners that you've discussed. They listen, they act, and we never give up. We are constantly trying to reach the community as we're doing now. We support the mental health well-being in Ghana. So in October, every year, the mental health month, they spend time in Ghana with professionals. They provide and support organizations with medical skills, workshops, and training. At this moment, Stella and her, the mental health professional team, they're working tirelessly to get some stuff in Ghana to train people in Ghana. Here in the UK, we are constantly providing the awareness to the community about mental health. What Simon has done today is it's exceptional, because suffering racism at work does give you a mental health an issue, and also tapping into the local systems and how Dr. Dye as well implementing all these facilities is amazing. So this is it's how he's leading off to one another in terms of supporting in the UK. With a vision in Ghana, health institutions in the country implementing holistic care, community involved in the services, users and their families, and also getting the NHS links to Ghana, as I previously explained. In collaborative with the Ghana Mental Health Services, quality improvement with provision, and possibly implementing mental health teams within doing little teams and workshops in Ghana. So that is basically what Bestel is about. We are really grateful to be here, and we are really addressing the stigma within our community. And we are hoping that, we can at least reach to anybody who wants, our services. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. Afitwa Mambo, thanks for joining last minute. You guys are late. You guys should have come in at 8 o'clock. And we need more questions. We need to be interactive, guys. So thank you lot for joining in. It's been fabulous.
Nathaniel said, I live in Lambeth. Keep up the good work, Simon.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Well done. Well done. And FA said, Simon's face is just very warm. Thank you, Simon, and your beautiful two hosts. We are sexy, FA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Big Joe, for powering the show for us. God bless you always. You disappeared for a couple of minutes. Where did you go, babe? I think this is it. We're done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in. And we'll be here next week on Tuesday. Same time, same place. My name is Miss Newlove, and I'm one of the hosts of a brand new show brought to you by Bestel Foundation.
The Wellbeing Show is to help reach BAME families, to help with mental health, support, and emotional needs. The Wellbeing Show streams live every Tuesday at 8 to 9 p.m. on Diversity Radio via Facebook, YouTube, and Mixcloud. So tell your family and friends to tune in as we discuss topics that affect our well-being. The Wellbeing Show is proudly sponsored by NHS South London and Maudsley, the National Lottery Community Fund, and partnered with Real Insight, Base, 60 Seconds Creative Studio, and Gold Diggers Talk Show.
Hi, my name is Miss Newlove, and I'm one of the hosts of a brand new show brought to you by Bestel Foundation.
The Wellbeing Show is to